Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kees Edenbaas. I'm a former correspondent for Dutch media in Latin America, and they asked me to moderate this meeting this afternoon. Hopefully it came to your attention that yesterday it was the International Human Rights Day. In this context, the Pletterij and Shelter City Haarlem are organizing this meeting with, well, the idea was two human rights defenders, one from Peru and one from Venezuela. It seems that we have a little problem that one of the guests will not be arriving this afternoon, but we will try to get him online during this meeting. Let me introduce our guests first. Ayrton, welcome. Ayrton is a young communication specialist from Venezuela. He uses social media to teach young people how to protect themselves against violence and human rights violations. The other person we invited but will not be present here, hopefully online, is Atok. He's a photographer and human rights activist from Peru. And then last but by no means least is our third guest, former Amnesty International director Edward Nazarski. He will discuss the role of human rights defenders for society and the importance of the program like Shelter City. During our meeting here, the public can join us through the live stream, of course. They can ask questions through the chat that is on the live stream. And so now, without further ado, I would like to ask Ayrton to step up over there and begin his presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon. Is it open? Hello. Hello, good afternoon to everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Well, my name is Ayrton Monsalve. I am a human rights defender in Venezuela, journalist especially, and director of a communicational initiative called Repblica TV. Today, I would like to talk about creative activism to promote freedom of expression and access to information in Venezuela. Have access to information in Venezuela is really difficult in this moment because the Maduro regime put a lot of pressure of the media, close journalists, attack to journalists, media and the citizens who want to explain and search information about what happened with the sensitive political situation in Venezuela. For example, in 2021, since January to 30 November, we had near of 500 violations about freedom of expression and access to information. The victims are journalists in a 40%, the media in a 20%, and citizens in a 10%. Reporting and having access to information in Venezuela is difficult and risky. But I would like to ask, what happened with the youth population in the middle of this context? What happened with the young when they want to search information, when they want to browse in internet, yes? And the intensification of the political and economic crisis in Venezuela has been distancing Venezuelan youth from the debate on the public affairs. They need to subsist and attend to economic activities is the fierce priority of the young population, yes? And by that reason, when you ask to the young people, what is your opinion about the last election? What is your opinion about the political situation? They respond, no, it's their problem, they prefer make money, they prefer search other activities, because since 2017, after the big protests in Venezuela, the young people don't think about the possibility to a political change in our country. When you studied the National Survey of Youth 2021, you can see around 27% of young Venezuela think that a democracy is the same as a dictatorship. And this is a sad reality because in these years, the young people don't believe in the democracy, don't believe in the political actors, and prefer dedicate that to another activities or think in live to another countries because in Venezuela in this time it's really difficult for the young people to think in a change or in a transition to that democracy. Yes. By that reason, it's necessary to implement strategies that allow breaking the walls of censorship and reconnecting young people with public affairs. In conclusion, it's difficult to search information about political situation and the young people don't believe in the politics, don't believe in the democracy. By that reason, I started last year a communicational initiative to try to reconnect the political situation, the political information with the young people. My initiative tried to link the political situation information with entertaining formats. I think I study the young people try to spend leisure time in the social media, enjoy, talk with friends, share memes and another format. And when I see that, I think, what happens if we link memes with political information and try to disseminate that in the social network? When I link that, I have like a result a La Repblica TV. La Repblica TV was born in March 2020 in the middle of the pandemic situation, and this is a result of an experiment to try to share how Maduro regime have the control of the public space and how the COVID-19 helped to Maduro to take more control of the population. That was one of first posts of the Repblica TV. For example, Maduro appoints COVID-19 as a new Minister of Interior and Justice. This post was around March 2020, and we tried to explain that situation. Now we have our concept of that communicational initiative is try to satisfy the elusive and entertaining needs of the population, of the young population, while informing, identifying, and integrating them into the country's political and human rights problems. Yes, the Repblica TV tried to inform in a creative and a different formats. Yes. Looking posting in the social media information about political situation, but in a different format for be more attractive for the young population. Our results in a 1 year and a 9 months are more 2,500 followers in our account La Repblica TV, more or 14,000 account reached, and 3,163 profile visits. Our community in our social medias try to connect with the young population, and our audience in a 70% are between 18 and 30 years old. And this is a good result because we are always posting political information and different formats, and thanks to that, the young people start to share information about what happened in Venezuela with the human rights situation, what happened with Venezuela with the International Criminal Court, what happened with Venezuela in the Human Rights Council. And but our difference with other medias is we put that information in a attractive, creative, and in a different format. That different format help a lot to reconnect with the young people with the political subject and human rights subjects. Yes, we try to connect, for example, with movies, with with subjects who are very interesting for their young audience, and link that format, for example, with the serial La Casa de Papel. We make parodies of that series of Netflix, for example, and put information about what happened in Venezuela. We explain what happened in Venezuela using series like La Casa de Papel, and that is and with that experiments, with that production, we have a good results connecting in political information with the young people. Yes. Thanks to our work in this year, now we are working together with the civil society, because some organizations in Venezuela call us for teach to their activists to how make better campaigns about human rights situation in Venezuela, about political situation. We are now a reference in our country to try to teach to more people to use memes, to use different formats for sharing sensitive information, because the priority in this moment is try to young people connect again with the political situation, because if the young people lost the interest for the political situation in our country, it's very difficult to have a good future in the next year. Yes, La Repblica TV teach to students at the university, to human rights defenders in these webinars, and trying to and our purpose is, if you try to communicate your message in a different format, in attractive format, you maybe have more possibilities to connect with more audience. Yes, the humor is really important in this moment, because our people don't believe in the political, don't believe in the possibility to change, and by that reason we need to try to work in special formats. We need try to work in creative formats for sharing our sensitive information reports in the young audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ayrton. Edward, would you like to react to what Ayrton told us just now?
Yeah, well, I'll try. Ayrton, this is really impressive what you tell us, and I think maybe two things that I would like you to explain a bit. The first is, do you in this initiative, this Repblica, do you connect with other organizations, or do you liaise, do you collaborate with other organizations? Because it seems that maybe more people are convinced that you should reach out more to younger people, and if indeed more than a quarter of the people do not know, of the young people do not know the difference between a dictatorship and a democracy, there's certainly some work at hand, I would say, which seems very much for a starting initiative. So do you collaborate with other organizations?
Yes, and we start to work together with other organizations, with youth organizations in the university. We try to talk about our initiative in ONGs in Venezuela, like Network of Civil Rights Defenders in Venezuela. It's a coalition of human rights defenders in Venezuela who are interested to know how we can teach more people about use our creative formats for sharing information about human rights situation in Venezuela.
Yeah, thank you. Could I have another question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
And well, a second question is maybe of a more delicate or sensitive nature, but this work, what has it done with yourself and the circumstances you work in? Do you want to tell us a bit about that? Where you, for instance, in very, very Dutch language maybe, but you came to Haarlem not because you always wanted to be here, but because you needed to get out for some period, I suppose. So could you tell us a bit about that? What happens when you are engaged in this kind of activities?
Well, our difference to other humor initiative, we try to use, for example, movies.
Yeah.
Movies who are really famous in the young people, yes?
Yeah.
And we try to explain the situation of Venezuela using that movies.
Yeah.
And this is more different to, for example, make directly parodies of the Maduro regime, yes? We think it's really important be smart in the restrictive context when you try to make humor about the political situation. We try to talk about our situation, but using other actors, other example, but the people connect really well and understand we are talking about the Maduro regime and we are talking about the political and human rights situation in Venezuela.
Yeah, but it's very nice to hear that you have a lot of people that support you, and you have reached to a substantial number of followers on in social media. But there must also be people, either from the government or individuals, that do not like what you do.
Well, yes, we are clear about in Venezuela. Always we are in risk when we work sharing information about the political situation. Yes, but I think always our focus always is under the actors of the Maduro government. Yes, but now in this time, the young people don't believe too in the opposition leaders, for example, and we in sometimes put a post about our opinion about that opposition leader, because the young people think, or one reason why the young people lost the hopeless about the change in Venezuela is because our opposition leaders need renew, need do new activities, need do I don't know. Are be different, yes.
They need to act different in order to have
And
more,
in the Repblica TV, we post to how the democracy actor need to change that. Is a balance, yes.
But I think the main reason for your question was to ask you, what did it do for you personally? Was it very stressful? Was it very dangerous? I mean, I mean, you're here for a reason. I mean, to get some breath, to be out of the situation for a while. How did this affect your personal life?
Well, yes, work with political information and human rights information and try to share that in different formats is a little stress, yes, stress for our team. But we believe if in the humor, like a safe channel in this time to sharing information about that situation. Yes, it's more safe sharing information using the humor to sharing indirectly in the conventional formats. Yes, for example, well, always we work with digital security to protect our accounts. And always we try to say to the population about, well, we want the people reconnect with the political situation, and the humor no is dangerous, and the humor, well, for example, we participate in the day of the peace, in the peace day, International Peace Day. We participate in a campaign about the humor no is your enemy. Mm-hmm. The humor is the possibility of you can see what do you need change for you be a better political actor. This is our message. We don't want to use the humor for for only say you are bad a person, you are a bad person. No, you can see in the humor like opportunity to watch what are my mistakes like a political actor, and when you see in a post of the Repblica TV, I don't know, when unpolitical actors see their image in a post of the Repblica TV, has a big opportunity to change what is doing bad in this moment.
Thank you very much. I think it's time now for a little experiment because we have to improvise a little bit because Atok is not here in... we have his presentation, I think. I mean, in the meanwhile, you will try to get him on the phone, Ayrton. I will use this time to remind you that Shelter City is a global movement that creates safe and inspiring spaces for human rights defenders at risk. Haarlem has been one of the 12 Dutch shelter cities since 2018. Every year the city welcomes a human rights defender for about 3 months. Ayrton and Atok, they are here already for the last 2.5 months to get some breath well, you have him on the phone. Well, let's try and see if this works. We have his presentation online, and he's going to give some comments by phone. Let's see if we... Atok, do you hear us?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thanks. Sorry for the mistake. I'm very far from Haarlem now, but I would like to say something, to share my experience too. I was watching the YouTube live. Yeah, so should I present myself?
Yes, please. I mean, in the meanwhile, we could probably look to the images you've sent to us online. Is that possible?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you very well.
Yes, go ahead with your presentation, and in the meanwhile, we will try to get your images online.
Okay. I will introduce myself. My name is Atok. I am a photojournalist from Peru. My work focuses on denouncing the police violence, and I've been doing this since 2014. So from 2014, I realized that during protests in Lima, which is my city, the big media, they didn't show what the police do. I mean the repression, because the media has political opinion too. They are against people fighting for their rights. They need people to be silenced, to be obedient. And when the people are on the streets protesting, sometimes or a lot of times the big media they said something like there were a few people and they were violent, so that way what media is doing is criminalizing the protest and giving an opinion to the population that protest is bad. Like if you protest, you are violent. If you fight for your rights, maybe you are a terrorist. That's how the media work in Peru. And because of that, in 2014, I realized that with my camera, I can do something, because I wanted to show the other face of the protest. So I started doing that, sharing by the social media my photos of the protest, and especially I focus when the police target and shoot to the people. because it's something illegal, but they do that. The police shot to the people during protests because they know that they will have the government support if they kill someone during a protest. There is a law who says that the law says that the police can use their arms, their weapons, against unarmed people when they consider that their life are at risk. So in protest, people don't use weapons. They only use rocks or things like that. Or even if there are peaceful protests, the police still shoot to the people. And yeah, so that's my work. I focus on denouncing when the police shoot to the people, when they use the violence in a illegal way. Yeah, because of that, in 2017, I was shot by the police. They shot me in the face. One little bullet entered to my left eye. So I almost lost my eye. I lost the vision, the 70% of the vision from my left eye. And it was in 2017. And my case, because I denounced the Peruvian state because of that, but my case is still in impunity. There is no one in being judged. Nothing happened. That's why I wanted to continue doing this, like to continue denouncing the Peruvian state when it's using violence against citizens. Well, that's me. That's my presentation. I'm a photojournalist and also an activist. And with my work, I try to defend the human rights of citizens in Peru.
Well, thank you very much, Atok, that at least we had you on the phone in this way. Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions from this side for Atok at the moment? Of course.
Atok, thank you very much for your presentation. I saw some of the pictures in your presentation, and I wonder, how do you publish them in your country? Is it online, or do some media also take your pictures, or how does it work?
So when I started in 2014, I was publishing my photos on Facebook, on social media. And I liked when people took my photos and share it, and when people download my photos, and also when they intervene, when they do something like write on the photos or use in a different way. I like that because I think that my work doesn't belong only to me, is part of the protest too. So in 2014, it was like that. I was sharing my images by Facebook, and I invite people to use it, to repost or to share or to print it. Then I became more, how do you say, when people know you. So because of my work in 2015 and 16, I became more known by young people in Peru because of my photos. And then the media, the newspapers, they also use my photos. They use my photos in their newspapers or online, and they didn't write my credits or pay me for that. So I started asking to other more experimented journalists what to do in that cases, because you can denounce it. But then I denounced it to the group of ethics by journalists in Peru, but they didn't do anything about that. So that I was like that, just publishing online, and I didn't care if other people use my images. But then I started working with other activists or journalists, and I changed my way to share my information. So I start to not to be so fast, not to publish the same day, but to have the time to edit the images, to prepare a presentation, and to send it to independent media in Peru and also outside Peru. So that way I start working more professional, presenting myself as a photojournalist and asking for media to pay me for the reportage. So I changed my way of show my work.
Well, thank you very much, Atok. Please stay on the line, because in the meantime, I will remind our audience as well that you can ask questions through the chat. The chat you will see in the live stream.
I want to know if you can see my presentation, my photos.
Yes, we did.
Oh.
So when you were talking, we did present your pictures that you sent us.
Okay, that's good.
So
thanks.
Yeah, that was taken care of. Don't worry. Just stay on the line if that's possible for you, Atok. And then in the meanwhile,
I'll be here watching on YouTube.
Okay. That's perfect. Well, in the meanwhile, we will go to our third guest, Edward Nazarski. He's a former Amnesty International director. And he will discuss the role of human rights defenders for society and the importance of this Shelter City program. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you, first of all, for organizing this and for the opportunity to be here. What I want to tell you is a few things in very general sense about the importance of human rights, and then I'll narrow down to some specific topics. And I want to start with a very long time ago, the 10th of December, 1948, when in Paris the United Nations met and solemnly declared the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And you must imagine, 1948, few years after the Second World War, totally different situation worldwide than we have now, but also a very huge belief that the world never should have the atrocities of the Second World War again. And that led to first to the establishment of the United Nations, and secondly, in 1948, to the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. And it wasn't easy to have a Universal Declaration worldwide, because the differences were enormously. The differences between India, Latin America, the Soviet Union, the United States, France, Lebanon, there were huge differences, but nevertheless they succeeded in having this Universal Declaration in very plain language, very direct language. And I'll show you only one of those, the first article of 30, and that reads, "All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards another in a spirit of brotherhood." And possibly you would now say also sisterhood or whateverhood, but the essence is all human beings, so everyone is born free and equal in dignity and rights. Free, equal, dignity, rights. Those are the core points of human rights. And this Universal Declaration at first didn't do that much because, well, it was just adopted by the United Nations and solemnly declared, but that didn't do too much. And in the Netherlands, it wasn't known very much. But then after that, in the years after, more and more human rights conventions and treaties came into being. For instance, the Refugee Convention, or for instance, the European Convention on Human Rights. And then it became really business, so to say. Then it became really something that you could rely on and that you were entitled on, because a declaration, well, we can say, well, you declared, and then somebody else could say, well, yeah, well, that's it. But if you have a treaty, and that's an international obligation between states, so states agreed with all kinds of obligations towards their citizens and towards groups and citizens, or towards free media, for one instance. So they agreed on all kinds of obligations that was written down in international law, and they also agreed on some gremia that could check whether they were correct or not. And that could be a committee that is looking into how they execute some elements of some treaty, and that could be, like in Europe, the European Court on Human Rights. Also very important, and very important that this all came into being. So you can see that from 1948 on until now, very many international treaties, conventions have become a fact, have become reality. I mentioned already two, but there could be much more, many more, like the International Covenant on Civil Political Rights, or the International Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights. The right to freedom of expression, very important. Children's rights, also very important. So all those international treaties have been based upon this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it has been a very important cornerstone in order to advocate for human rights worldwide. So far the good news. The reality is this. These are world leaders, and I only put 10 of them, well, more I couldn't have on one slide, but and that you could have different ones, I immediately agree. But if you see the difference between this solemn declaration, this ambition, this promise of the universal community, and you see then that these men should take care of that, you can see that there's some discrepancy between the promise and the reality. And if you look very briefly, Vladimir Putin, well, I rest my case, I'd almost say. But Putin in Russia, no NGOs, no freedom of expression, no freedom of speech. Erdogan has done in a few years exactly the same. Orban in Hungary has copied Putin, but has done it much more quick. Xi Jinping in China, and we have now the debate in the Netherlands and other countries whether or not the games should be on a diplomatic way boycotted. And I think of course you should do, because you can't let them just murder Uyghurs and have them in concentration camps and just say, well, but now we are skating or we are skiing and that's more important. So there should be done something. Maduro, well, I'm not going into that. Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. Last week we had the Formula One race in Saudi Arabia, but an enormously oppressive regime. Modi in India, the same. Bolsonaro in Brazil, also the same. And then Lukashenko in Belarus. And then we have maybe the worst of all, but Assad in Syria, who used poison gas against his own population, who used cluster bombs against his own population, and who is still the president and who won more or less the civil war. And now a lot of countries are considering to make him more or less legitimate again and to take him again into the international gremia, which is, of course, for all the people that had to flee Syria, a disaster. So if you look at the promise of 48 and the reality of now, there's certainly something at hand. And a lot of countries I couldn't include here, but we see now more and more very authoritarian regimes that are not afraid to use violence against their own population. And that is very concerning, and that should concern us all. Then we come to a more cheerful thing. We have very many very brave people that advocate for rights, for their own rights, for rights of others. And I only listed here 3 of them, and there could be hundreds of them, but 3 of them that were all 3 nominated for the prize of the Dutch government on human rights, which was awarded this week also because of Human Rights Day. And this prize is 100,000 euros, which is quite an enormous amount of money, at least I consider that to be an enormous amount of money. But also it is very important, the recognition for organizations or individuals to have this prize. But also important is that Dutch officials, Dutch diplomats, they will be very supportive and active in order to facilitate contacts of these human rights defenders. They will go to the governments of those countries. They will speak out if necessary. So that is a very important prize they do. And we have 3 here. I'll briefly mention them that were nominated. Nunca Más in Nicaragua. Nunca Más is documenting human rights abuses that have been taking place in Nicaragua and still take place. And Nunca Más, never again. We want this to happen never again, but they feel, and I've seen that in very many countries all over the world, they say that if we don't document what's happening, we will never be able to cope with the past. We have to document what has happened, and we have to be able to hold perpetrators of law and of human rights standards accountable. And if we don't document, we can never do that. So that is very, very important and a very brave task they do, because Nicaragua has gone from maybe also a promise in the early 80s to a disaster and a dictatorship now. The second is Marie Davtyan in Russia. And Russia under Putin is going in a very traditional sense. They proclaim traditional values, the right of family, the strong Russia that has ever been. But they deny that in Russia there is a lot of domestic violence, a lot of violence against women. And Marie Davtyan is a very brave woman who puts this topic in the spotlight and who says, I want to end that domestic violence. I want to put that in the spotlight and I want the government to act. Because of that, she's in danger herself. The same is for Nunca Más and the same is also for the third person I know. But because the danger for herself, it's even the more brave that she just continues to do her work, to call out to governments, to call out to media and to say, this is what's happening in our cities, in our villages. This is the violence that women have to suffer with. And this is not the Russian values that we should proclaim. And I think also a very brave woman. The third one is Nicholas Opio. He's in Uganda. He is a lawyer. He has very many followers on Twitter, and he is more or less famous, but also notorious for some in Uganda, because he takes very contested issues like LGBTI, which is in Uganda really contested. So because he takes those cases to court and then they have publicity, and he tries to defend from a perspective from Ugandan law and international law why people should be either prosecuted, so offenders, or people should be freed, like LGBTI people who are accused of being gay or being whatever. So he, a very brave man. So 3 examples on human rights defenders that show a bit around the world, but that also show a bit of different types of activities. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ben Knape, he said when he awarded the prize to Nicholas Opio, he said some very good things. He said, well, in the world we need fire brigades and we need doctors in order to save what we have. But we also need human rights to save who we are, what we are. So to save what we have, we need all kinds of provisions. To save who we are, human beings that care for other human beings, we need human rights. At the same time, I must say that human rights in the Netherlands and in other countries, and especially in Europe, are not really very well respected. And we see in the Netherlands a lot of instances, but we also see this in Europe, unfortunately. This is a picture I took from a Dutch paper, I think now a year ago, but a very compelling picture. It has been taken in Lesbos in a refugee camp, Moria. I've been there a few times in the camp, not at this moment, but when people were protesting against the total lack of facilities in the camp, so no toilets, no showers, no decent food, no medical care, no education for children, nothing, and just endless waiting in the mud or in the cold or in the burning heat. and nothing to do, and no perspective and no progress. When people were protesting, the riot police came in, and then you see these images. Very shameful to see that this happens in Europe, and that this happens with knowledge of the Dutch government, who doesn't do anything to improve on that. So Dutch government really should, and we will have a new coalition government, we hope, in a few days. Dutch government should improve on their acting upon human rights, and I think it's possible. They do so in foreign policy a lot of times, and they do that very well. They should also do that towards other issues in society and towards refugees. And that is where one of the important things of shelter cities come in. Because shelter cities are, as our moderator said, providing shelter for people at risk. You can go to Haarlem, you can go in the Netherlands to Nijmegen, to Den Haag, to other cities, to Utrecht, in order to get out of the situation where you're either overburdened or in real present and actual danger, and you could go there. So that is a very important function, but also it's very important that because of this, very many citizens in the Netherlands can be in touch with people that have been defending and are defending human rights. And because of this, you can have more identification, and you can see better how it is to stand up for human rights, how it is to stand up for human rights in a country where, not as in the Netherlands, the right to protest is something that is given in the constitution, but also respected in a very broad sense. And because of that, because of this possibility of contact and being aware or realizing how it is to be without some or many human rights, that is, I think, very important for the conscience of people, for the awareness in the population. And I think, therefore, the Shelter City projects are extremely important. So not only for the individuals, but also for the surrounding society, and what it does with the awareness of citizens that suddenly realize we live in a very nice country, that we take all these things for granted that others are apparently not having. So that is very important. The second thing, and the last thing that I want to say now is, and well, I've worked for 14 years with Amnesty, so you won't blame me if I take one example of Amnesty. The right for rights. It has been done in Haarlem very many times already. It has been done in gatherings of people, and because of COVID, that's now unfortunately impossible. But everyone can do it online, and I can assure you, and that it helps. It helps for people that you write to. It helps if people know and realize that others know about their situation and they care about this situation. I've seen very many people, and that was one of the luckier things in my function as director of Amnesty, that I saw people that were released after actions of Amnesty, and that said, actions by Amnesty. And they said to me, it was so strange, but also so beautiful when we realized that you were campaigning in favor of us, and that we received letters and postcards, because that's one of the very strange things, that in very oppressive regimes like in Egypt, people receive postcards in prison, and that they realize then somebody is thinking of me. That gives courage and that helps. But also the pressure, that because many people do that, that helps governments to act different. And it really helps, not immediately, but a lot of times. And I've seen in very many cases that because of the pressure of a lot of individual citizens, that regimes changed their attitude and they changed what they did to individual persons. Sometimes it also helps in order to have new legislation, but that's even a bigger goal and farther away. But it really helps for individuals. So everyone in the audience that hasn't written a letter yet, look at the Amnesty website, see what kind of people, the action is this year for, and try to participate. You can do it today, you can do it tomorrow, you can do it the day after tomorrow. That's up to you, but it's very important to participate in that. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks for your attention, and well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward. Very clear message, obviously. First of all, let me go to, I think we have a question in the chat.
He's also watching. And it's about Edward told things that are hopeful, and he told also things that are going rather bad. So Arno wants to know, what do you think? What's the balance of all these things you told? Do you think things will go better or worse in the coming time?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, and a very important question. And the reality is I do not know whether it will be better or worse. But of one thing I'm very sure, if we don't act, it will be worse. And if we act and we action and we campaign, and then we will have a chance to improve. But if we just sit at home and do nothing, it will go the wrong way.
It's up to us.
At least partly, yeah.
Partly.
Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe, well, a side question or related to that. I mean, do you have the impression that human rights are under pressure at the moment? Because, I mean, a lot of people have, I mean, maybe because also of the pandemic and the situation we live in at the moment, that even human rights are under pressure, and that the situation is getting worse instead of better.
Well, yeah, human rights have always been under pressure, I think. Human beings are sometimes very cruel to each other, and that is a fact of history, and that stays with us. And if you look back at the 70s, or when Amnesty was just into being, also here in the Netherlands, if you look then and what Shah Reza Pahlavi did in Persia, that was really very cruel towards many people. And then there came a new regime and they did other cruel things. When you look at Latin America, well, I don't have to tell you, Kees, but when you look at Latin America in the 70s, all these dictatorships in Chile and Paraguay and Uruguay and Argentina, in Dominican Republic and go on, Trujillo, etc. They were so extremely violent and cruel, and so in some parts of the world it improved, in other parts it deteriorated very quickly. But now, with all the authoritarian regimes and also the world leaders, that's not only the United States but also very much China, it's getting more and more difficult, and it's also getting more difficult in United Nations because there's no one that really can speak out for human rights anymore. There's no one that can put an emblema forward and it's without sin, so to say. So that makes it very difficult. And everyone, well, you could say America, well, whatever you want, but they still have the death penalty. They still have Guantanamo not closed, so and a lot of issues there too. And China even more. Russia, well, I showed you the slide with all the heads of state. So that makes it now maybe more difficult that you don't have someone, well, yeah, a very strange word maybe, but not like a cheerleader that can walk in front of the troops and say, well, this is what we should do. That shows the road, that shows the way to improve human rights, and that makes it more difficult. Mm.
Yeah, I think, well, that one thing that sticks with me, what you mentioned in your presentation just now, is that it matters to people that you speak out, that you write, that you make it clear that you're there, that you make it clear that you're thinking about the people who are in this kind of situation. So yeah. I would like to ask you, Erton, is that something that you felt during the last period? Because you're here now like 2 or 3 months, right? I mean, does it support you in your work? Is it important for you to feel that sort of people who understand and who want to be there for you?
Yes, I am really grateful with the support of the organization here in Netherlands. I had the opportunity to have a meeting with Amnesty International last week and explain what is the situation in my country. Had the opportunity to be here explaining what I am doing to promote the freedom of expression in my country and promote the access to information is really important because yes. Now we have a difficult situation in Venezuela, but if you think we don't have opportunity to change that, well, or is lost. But if you start to do a small work for promote the change in the, for promote democracy values in the young population, if you work with the young population, maybe you have a bigger possibility to promote and to promote the change in our country. Yes. And this is very important to explain here. For example, the next week I will visit a school in Rotterdam to explain to Nederlandse students about my work with the Repblica TV and explain how using the creative format you can inform more to the young population and break the walls of the censorship in a context, in a restrictive context like Venezuela.
Thank you, thank you. I think we have another
Yes.
question in the live stream.
At first, the question is, does your TV station, is it under threat of the government, or is it, as it were, protected by this use of humor? Is that a way to be safe from the government?
Well, I would like to say about the humor is that for us it's a safe channel to inform about political situation. Always, whatever activity you do in Venezuela is have a risk. Yes, but working when we decide to work with humor is because the humor have the possibility to not be more important for political actors. Yes, and we try to inform in a creative format to impact disconnect audience, like the young people, like in this moment is the situation in Venezuela. We have a website and a social media, and we protect our website and our social media with tools, links to security digital, and this is an actions, and we take that actions to protect our information. That's it.
Could you say it's you're using it as a shield against the government, so they can't threaten you then? It's like a shield?
Yes, what happened? For example, 3 months ago, comedians were was under the eyes of the regime because they work directly making parodies of the political actors of the regime. We don't work using that format because it's more risk. We use, for example, we compare the Venezuela situation with Harry Potter. We compare the Venezuela situation with Disney Pixar. And our most recently production was compare the La Casa de Papel and Netflix series with Maduro regime. Yes, when you use the comparison and when you compare, it's more easy to be attractive it's more attractive for the young population because the young population saw La Casa de Papel. When they saw a Repblica TV is talking about La Casa de Papel, it's attractive and reproduce the content and connect with political information. And it's safe because, well, sometimes a political actor of the regime looked at this. What is that? La Casa de Papel. No, it's directly, no, it's a directly parody of the regime. It's a tool who want to explain using movies, series on another another movies or I don't know, to explain what happened in Venezuela. And this is more safe to make directly parodies, for example, push a mustache of Maduro, talk. No, we don't work in this format because it's more risk.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it sounds excellent. Thanks very much. Just one more question. The last one, actually.
A general question about Latin America. Have you got any idea of the reason that democracy is deteriorating in Latin American?
Well, thank you for your question. Well, the last week I was in Madrid participating in an event about populism and what happened in Latin America. It's the same question. And I think, for example, in 1998, when Chavez arrived to the power in Venezuela, the population was disconnected of the political situation. The population in Venezuela don't believe in the traditional party, don't believe in the democracy, don't believe in the political actors. And when look to Chavez, Chavez looks attractive. It's different, and the population think this is different. Maybe we need military actors for change that situation. And both for Chavez and elect, and wasn't a democratic election where Chavez wins the president of Venezuela, yes? And this is a big problem. In this moment, we need to work a lot with the society to learn more about human rights, to learn more about the importance of the democracy values, yes? And learn more or teach more to the population about if you don't believe in the democracy, if you want fast solutions for your problem, you are in risk to elect to the populist actor, to the military actor who promised to you to respond to your problems and take the control of the country. And this is the history of Venezuela in these 20 years, yes? By that reason, the Repblica TV, in my opinion, is really important, because if the young people lost the connection with the democracy, with the democracy values, with the opportunity to participate in the public subjects, the country is lost, yes?
Thank you very much. Excellent. We have to leave it there. It's past 5 o'clock, so it's we're past the time. I want to say very much thanks to our guest, Ayrton. Thank you very much. Atok, if you're still with us somewhere, thanks again. I mean, we're very happy to still have you on this program for a while. Edward, thank you very much. And I just want to say to our listeners and viewers, keep supporting the work of Shelter City, keep supporting the work of Amnesty International, because one of the messages of this afternoon is very clear. Your voice can be very important, and they want to hear you. Don't sit silent at home, but make your voice heard. Thank you very much.